Joining us this week on the show, and this is a sentence I never thought I'd actually say out loud. It is the one and only Denise Richards. Denise, how the hell are you?
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm good. Thank you so much. How are you?
All the better for seeing you, for having you on the show. We've got tons to talk about. But the first question, I think, is the most importantly. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No. So we're going to glide on into James Bond in a little bit, because we talk about spy movies on this show. So don't worry, there'll be lots to talk about. But I think a really interesting question to talk about early on is, you're an actor. What interested you in becoming an actor in the first place before you got into Bond or anything like that?
I don't know. I think it was ever since I was a little girl, I always enjoyed movies and, would do different silly little plays when I was a kid for the family, and then took drama class when I, started to get a little bit older. But I just always was, I don't know, I just always had a passion for it. And so even early on when I would get rejected, well, first, when I got my SAG card, my first two jobs were Doogie Howser and Saved by the Bell. And that's how I got my SAG card. And I booked those back to back, and I thought, well, this is easy, to book a job. Well, I quickly learned it wasn't, and I would get rejected many times. But I always say, with all the rejections then the job that I would get, it made up for all the no's, because it was just something I loved and was very excited to do.
And, before we get to Bond, there's some very big films in your filmography before that point. I think of things like Starship Troopers, Wild Things, fantastic films. But do you think there was a role that you had very early on that put your name out there?
For sure, I think, two, Starship Troopers and Wild Things came out within months of each other. So I did a pilot for Aaron Spelling that it was on, the height of Melrose Place and all that. And so all of us thought that it would get picked up. It never got picked up, which was a huge disappointment for all of us. And then, I got Starship. We were very lucky because the budget was enormous and they were hiring pretty much unknowns for those roles. And then shortly after that, I got Wild Things, but Starship and Wild Things came out within months of each other. So those two combined, I think, is what really changed my career, as far as they were movies that came out in a movie theater.
Sure.
It wasn't a pilot that didn't get picked up, or it wasn't a guest starring role on a show, which I was always grateful for. But those were the ones that changed my career.
Did it feel like a real whirlwind period? Because you've been working for quite a while, but to have such big projects land so closely together.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely overnight, pretty much. When people say, oh, it happened overnight. No, that project that changes your career is what I believe can happen overnight. So it's a very surreal situation when, people start to recognize you, and, your life changes a lot that way. So yes, I definitely saw that and felt that.
And did you feel that in your personal life as well? By the time those two films had come out, were you being recognized in the street and that sort of thing? Had that happened by then?
Yes, with those two movies, it did. Yeah.
Well, I want to come back to those films afterwards, but I think let's tackle the core film here, which is James Bond. That happens just after these films, to be fair. Quite connected, I would say, in terms of the casting. But maybe before that, were you familiar with James Bond before The World Is Not Enough happened for you?
I've said this, and I can't believe I've admitted this, but I had never seen a James Bond movie before.
Wow.
Before I auditioned for it, and actually, so I auditioned quite a few times, and then I had to go. I will never forget this. I had to go to London to screen test with Pierce. They were bringing like, I think there was like 5 or 6 of us actresses, and I remember it was over Thanksgiving, and I'm very close to my family, and so my dad came with me to London while I screen tested, and it was which I'll never forget. Those are memories I'll never forget with him, and going there and auditioning. And so that was in November, and I believe it was after. I don't actually know. I think it was before Christmas. I just remember I was doing an interview for a magazine when I got the call that I actually got the part. So it was very surreal. And then I called my agent and I said, why is this on CNN that I'm a Bond girl? Like, it's never been in the news that I was in a movie before. And he was like, do you not realize how big this movie is? I'm like, no, I was so ignorant with that part of it that I did not realize the magnitude of the franchise. I quickly learned.
Now, did you go back and do any viewing of old movies, or did you decide?
Oh,
Okay,
yes, I did.
You did. Okay. I thought you might want to like
did.
even, stand aside and be like, you know what? I don't want the pressure to bury me. I'm just going to go in.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Like, there was a part of me that didn't want to go back and watch stuff in a way for me doing the part, but I wanted to educate myself on the franchise. And we shot from January to June, and then the movie, they do a quick turnaround. They have a very well-oiled machine, and Michael and Barbara Broccoli, they are incredible. And then the movie came out in November, and then I went on a press tour. That's really when I really realized the magnitude of the movie and the franchise and the fan base, and how loyal the fans are. And it was actually really wonderful to see how happy they are with being fans of the movie. It was something that I hadn't experienced before.
Did you have any sense of when you got hired, like what clinched the role for you?
Honestly, I don't know. I really, in hindsight, probably should have asked what it was, because I don't know. I know that, and I don't even know who else to this day who screen tested, because they kept us all very separate. They were very generous in flying us out there. Like I said, they brought my dad out with me, and I wasn't underage, so they didn't have to. So it was very kind of them to do that. And we didn't see each other. They would just put us through hair and makeup, and then we did our scenes. I was so nervous, and then flew home. And then once I was home, I found out. So I don't know what it was, what really got me the part, quite frankly. I was just so grateful it was me that got it.
And what was that sort of screen test like with Pierce Brosnan? It's probably the first time you've met him, I imagine.
Yeah, it was. I met him for the first time doing a screen test. It's very daunting and intimidating, and it's as an actress, it's scary, and I was so nervous. I had such anxiety, and I just said, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'll do my best, and I'm just so grateful that I made it this far in the process of auditioning.
And this was such a different time for NDAs and secrecy. What were they telling you at the time about the character?
I believe I can't, I mean, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I believe I did read the entire script.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Maybe it was just, I don't know. Maybe it was just scenes. That part I cannot remember. It might have been just scenes. I don't know. But then when we did get scripts, you know, like a lot of projects, your name is like across all of them, to where sometimes when you're reading it, you're like, okay, to go through my name to see the words of the script. So that happens a lot too. But I can't remember if I only got scenes. I would have to imagine it was only scenes and not the entire script.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they spoke to you about the character of Dr. Christmas Jones. They pitched it to you. You had auditioned for it, but what was your sense of the character at that time, and did it change by the time you'd filmed the film?
No, I believe, you know, she was very consistent with what I auditioned with. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I apologize if I don't know if it was the whole script. It was a long time ago, or if it was just scenes. I imagine it was just scenes. But, you know, I just loved that she was this strong, feisty woman, and it wasn't what I envisioned. And again, remember at this time, I hadn't watched one Bond movie, but of course I was aware of Bond girls. So I liked the fact that she wasn't just showing up in even though it was the beautiful glamorous dress and everything, that she was, you know, the character was a scientist, which I know a lot of people gave me a lot of, I got a lot of flack for that, like that I didn't look like a scientist wearing short shorts and a tank top. But I was like, well, you know, I could have been in the, you know, red gown showing up as the scientist. So I love that, you know, my character was wearing, even though it was shorts and a tank top, it wasn't, I felt like she had a little bit of, you know, she was a bit more grounded and, I don't know, a little bit more real. And I don't know if that's the right word, but I just felt that she was strong and feisty and fun, and didn't care, you know, what she looked like.
It's also like a ridiculous criticism, because as far as I know, most secret agents don't walk around in tuxedos.
Well, exactly. And when I got a lot of flack, I said, okay, I'm playing a Bond girl. It's tongue in cheek. If I was really wearing like a lab coat and doing all of that, and then people would say, well, why isn't she a Bond girl? So whatever. But it was very hard when that movie came out, because I did get a lot of flack for it. And it was not easy for me with the magnitude of the press that I did. And to go out there knowing people were making fun of me. That was the first time in my career that I had to deal with something like that. And it was very, very difficult for me. And I just had to put a smile on my face and go out and do talk shows and then travel the world. When I would go to my hotel and cry because the reviews, they were making fun of me and saying stuff. It was very, very difficult.
How much do you think that had to do with the actual movie versus, like, I don't know, perceptions they had of you as an actress at the time going even into the film?
You know, God bless his soul, because Michael Apted isn't here. But I'll never forget him saying, because there was a couple of changes I wanted to make when we were filming, and he apologized to me for not letting me do that. And it meant a lot to me that, you know, he did that. So, you know, I don't know. Regardless of all that, I am so grateful and proud that I was part of such an iconic franchise. So that it's a, you know, you never forget it. So I'm very grateful for that.
And I'd say conversely to the criticisms you've received, you know, if anything, you're showing that women in STEM can be this beautiful, you know, person, dressed beautifully, can do all these things. They can do anything they want, basically. And you embodied that on screen. I think it's a perfect encapsulation showing that women can do anything. And that leads into the film as well, because it's got 2 female leads, including a female villain, which Bond films hadn't done before.
Right. Yeah, no, It's true.
So just about sort of preparing for the role, did you do any sort of training at all, like, or any research for the role? Because there's some pretty physical scenes you had to go through.
Yeah, well, I worked with the stunt coordinator, Vic Armstrong, on Starship Troopers, which I was so grateful for, because it's I felt comfortable with him. And you know, it was because, like I said, it's a very daunting process. And after I got the role, I remember it was in November. Then after Christmas, I had to fly out there. I brought my mom out there, where I had to find a place to live. And it was very exciting for me to find like an apartment in London for 6 months, and to be able, but it was also scary because with Starship Troopers, there was such a camaraderie with all of us, because we were around the same age and the same level of our career. And I was actually very intimidated doing Bond, and no one was my age. I was the only American, I believe, that was working on it. You might know more than me, but I'm almost positive. So I was the youngest one. So a lot of them would go home at night to their family and stuff like that. And when I did Starship, we would all hang out. And when we were on location, we're like having dinner together and running our lines. And it was a very different dynamic with that movie. So it was, there was I was alone a lot, and it was a different vibe and energy and that sort of thing. But it was also, I really appreciated the, what a well-oiled, it's very well-oiled machine. Barbara Broccoli was so amazing. She was so great with me, and I loved her so much. But a lot of the preparation for the stunts we did, right on set. And it was a lot of the water. There was a lot of water stuff, which was very challenging at times to do.
And I'm curious, in terms of the scale of the production, did it feel like a fairly easy transition going from something like Starship Troopers into Bond, or did Bond feel like very different?
Well, Bond was very different. I mean, Starship was a huge scale as well, and that was a 6-month shoot as well, so the same amount of time filming. The difference for me, like with Bond, there was 2 or 3 crews going at once. So sometimes we'd be shooting with the first crew with our dialogue and stuff like that, and then we would have to go to another crew to do a lot of the stunts and that sort of thing. So it was, the scale was obvious, was bigger, but a Starship was enormous as well. So that part of it, they kind of were, was a little similar too.
Now, we mentioned Pierce Brosnan briefly when you did your sort of screen test, but you're now on set, you're filming the film with Pierce Brosnan. What was that like, and any sort of particular memories from working with him?
Oh, he's a class act. He's so nice, so sweet. I loved his hair and makeup guys. They were lovely. They were fun to go to. They were nice to like hang out with too. And he, Pierce is a little clumsy. So I found that kind of endearing about him, because people would recognize him as being Bond and this and that. And there was just something that was so endearing about him, that he wasn't always, in the suit and this, like, he's I don't know, he's really funny, and he's a very, very endearing and engaging and just super grounded. He was lovely.
And what was it like working with him, just in terms of the process of creating something of like a playful dynamic in the movie? Because you come in about the halfway point, and the Elektra character, that storyline's pretty heavy. In many ways, your stuff is kind of counterbalancing that in lightness. I'd just like to know about setting that tone with him.
There wasn't a lot of, surprisingly, we didn't do a ton of rehearsal before we started shooting, which is why I was extremely intimidated, because I was also working with Sophie Marceau, who's this, beautiful French actress who's done films that were very different from what I had done. So there were times I didn't feel like I was even worthy to be there, because I was working with Michael Apted and Pierce Brosnan and Sophie Marceau. And so I was, many times I felt very like, I was very intimidated by it. And I would be scared sometimes going to work. My first day on set, I think I had one line, and I was up all night, could not sleep, because it was with Judi Dench, and I was terrified. She couldn't have been nicer, but I was so scared that I was going to screw up my one line that I had to say that day, and it was my first day of shooting.
That's quite a trial by fire with Judi Dench there on your first day.
Oh yeah, I don't want to mess it up.
No. I was watching an interview with you on the press tour. You actually mentioned the press tour, watching on YouTube earlier today, and you mentioned the anxiety of going on set in a big production that Bond has. How did you deal with the anxiety?
You just deal with it. It's like every job is different. With Starship, it was, I had the camaraderie of all of us actors being like, oh my God, we're in a movie that's going to be in a movie theater. It's not a pilot that's not going to get picked up, or, a movie that may or may not end up. This was a huge movie, but I had that safety net and the camaraderie with all of us actors that were around the same age and level in our career. And it was so fun to have. It was like camp, that movie. And then, it's there's different anxieties. And then when I did Wild Things, it was the first time I was ever going to do anything that was nude, and I had anxiety about that. And then Bond, it was like a huge epic franchise. Like, so I think every actor has anxiety at some point or another when you do a role or whatever, and you just deal with it. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's, when you're scared, it's actually good, where you can just say, okay, we're going to go through this and just do it. And you have to be strong and just do it. So, that's, I think a lot of actors and directors and producers get anxious doing different projects.
Even guys interviewing Denise Richards get anxiety sometimes.
Oh, no need to.
And I had a question about your dialogue in the film. Your character has a lot of the technobabble in the film, describing the nuclear devices and all that. That is a huge challenge. And we've talked to other actors who have experienced real struggles trying to get their character across while also tackling that. What was your approach?
I wanted to just be as real as possible, but know what I was talking about. So obviously I had to look up half of what I was saying, and learn how to say it, and just, try to make it as natural and as much as possible.
Now, I just got to pick up on something before I move on for a question. You mentioned some suggestions you made to Michael Apted about things that your character could do. What do you recall what they were at all?
I remember, I don't know specifically, but I remember it had something to do with the first time my character meets Bond. And I remember, and like I said, I feel terrible even saying this, because like I said, God bless his soul, he's not here, but I do remember I wanted to shoot it a different way. And I remember him coming up to me, saying that he wished he had let me do that. I can't remember what it was at the time, but because again, it was so long ago, but I do remember that part of it. So, but it is what it is, and things happen, and I wasn't upset. I'm very easygoing too, and I am also so respectful. Like, he's such an incredible director that I trusted him too. And I'm okay, if you feel that I should do it, that I understand and I respect that. So but I can't remember exactly the exact specifics of it.
Oh, sure, that's not a problem. Now the question was, I was going to ask after that, was about one of the final set pieces, that submarine sequence with the water you had to deal with.
Yes.
I imagine that was quite the challenge, but what was that like?
That was a very, very difficult. It is so tall, like very, very high, and I had to climb down. I shot that with second unit, and I'll never forget this because they have to put so much chlorine in the water, and it sets off a gas, and it's extremely hard to breathe. And I remember when I started to go down, I couldn't breathe, and I was like having a hard time. And I climbed out, and the stunt guys, and then Vic said to me, "It's because of the chlorine. I would have had to. It took a while to get used to it. It was very difficult for me to do that. I asked them, can we just do it with like no chlorine in the water? I didn't care, and they couldn't because of bacteria. So that was the hard. It wasn't the water moving, and I can swim really well. I used to be on a swim team when I was younger. So it wasn't the swimming, it was the amount of chlorine in that confined space that I had a hard time dealing with. It was very difficult to breathe and that. Plus it dried out my skin. And when I got on the plane home, I was like, oh my God, this chlorine is not good for my skin or my hair.
And how long were you shooting that sequence?
Well, we did, it was off and on. We had to do different parts at different times, like different, there was a part where I believe where there was like the hatch, and we were in there and there was water underneath us. But for me, the hardest was when I was in there and hanging on to something. I'll never forget, where there was a lot of water. That was the one that was the hardest. And then when I was off the dock, jumping into that pool, that was actually great. That was good to film. But it was the confined space with the submarine.
When you're shooting in those sort of circumstances, when you wrap those sequences, does everyone just kind of breathe a sigh of relief that it's over?
As an actor, I did. Yeah. I don't know how everyone else was. I was like, because again, there was 3 units going with this movie, and that's why I say they're a well-oiled machine. It's a 6-month shoot, and we started in January, wrapped in June, and the movie's out in November. That is unheard of for a huge movie with all the special effects and the stunts and everything. That it's unbelievable that they're able to, put a movie out like that so quickly after wrapping.
And a sequence, speaking of effects, I would love to know, just from the point of view of shooting it, the pipeline trolley sequence, in terms of getting that across, because I'd just like to know the logistics of shooting that.
We were just outside there. They had these huge things. I think we were in Spain for that. And, you just do things in bits and pieces. And I actually now especially with social media, you see so much more behind the scenes. And I really, really wish that we had more behind the scenes stuff. And maybe there is more footage that someone else has somewhere, but because it is interesting to see like how we shot that and stuff. And I do think that the audiences, they want to see like, how is this done? How do you do that? Especially now. But now with all these movies, there's other ways for us to show, how it's done behind the scenes, but we just didn't have that. And so we did it we had to do bits and pieces of it.
Was it basically just like a rig with green screen around it?
I believe we did both. I believe we had stuff while we were on the physical location, and then we had to do green screen in the studio to, to cut it together.
Right.
You're taking me back so far. I'm trying to remember how the hell did we shoot that? I don't know, really, but I'm recalling that that's what we did. I could be wrong. And if someone from Bond, I am so sorry. If I am saying it's wrong, I apologize. This is what my memory is of it.
You were in the film. They weren't in the film. Therefore, your argument wins.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I remember, I believe that's how we did it, but I could be wrong.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
And just with the action sequence as well, the Russian base, which is maybe the most elaborate one, I would just like to know about making that sequence happen, working with Brosnan, the stunt team, and also Robert Carlyle. There's a lot of fire. Mm-hmm. It's a very complicated sequence.
We shot a lot of that in the studio, I believe, in London.
Right.
And then we shot some of it, I think, in Spain.
Okay.
I could be wrong, though.
And did you have to prepare a lot for like stunts? You talked about working with the stunt team, but was there any major stunts that you kind of
it was kind of like we also would, whatever I was comfortable with, I would do. Mm-hmm. But like I said, there wasn't like a ton of like training prep wise with that part of it so much. But because I worked with Vic Armstrong and oh my God. Oh, he was so amazing too. Oh my God, I feel terrible. Anyway, they also knew what that I'm comfortable doing stuff. I'm not like, oh, everyone, I will do as much as I can. Mm-hmm. As much as they'll let me, really. Right. And if I couldn't do something, I'd be like, I'm not one of these that will jump out of an airplane or climb. I wish I could do what Tom Cruise does, like and climb down the side of the big building. I'm terrified of heights. There's only a certain amount I would do with that stuff, but I would still try.
And I suppose sort of looking at the film now, you spoke about press. This is what happens with Bond films afterwards. There's a lot of press. There's a lot of world premieres all around the world. What was that experience like? Because that's quite the whirlwind tour after production.
It's really, actually, it was so incredible because it was so wonderful to see all the fans that would come out. I went all over the world to promote the movie and to see every country that we went to and how they were so excited and meeting all of us and seeing the movie. And it was actually really wonderful to see that we made an impact and, something that meant a lot to all the fans. So that was, to me, one of the best things that I ever experienced with this movie.
And whether on the press tour or shooting, I was wondering if you had any memories about Robbie Coltrane, who passed away last year.
I know. Yes, he was one of the nicest actors I've ever worked with. And part of the sequence when I had to, jump off into the water and he was just really lovely. He was a sweet, so sweet, so professional, and so just so nice to work with. So I was obviously extremely, it is very sad to hear about his passing. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful man. And I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to work with him.
Mm-hmm. I suppose my final question about the film before we sort of move us on and wrap us up a little bit is, in the rearview mirror now, it's been 20 or so years since this film came out. Just, are you surprised by its legacy and sort of what's your most enduring memory from your time making it?
Once I saw while I was doing the movie and saw the that it was such an iconic franchise, and people educated me. At the time, my boyfriend at the time told me, and my agent educated me, and my publicist and everyone. They were like, I'm not surprised that, because there were so many years of Bond prior to me being a Bond girl, so I am not surprised that it still lives up, and I think it's just a timeless, wonderful piece of going to the movies. And a lot of people have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, a lot of people would say that they would see Bond with like their grandfather, and then they're bringing their kids and their kids. So that's the thing that I think is what's wonderful, is that it's very timeless, and many, many generations have enjoyed these movies.
Well, I'm glad you actually mentioned that. You kind of queued up my question there, which was, have you shown it to your kids?
Oh, my kids really don't care about the movies I've done. That's the truth. When they were younger, I'd be like, "Oh, do you want?" We would like go through the channels and we'd see something. I'm like, "Oh, that's Mom." They're like, "Oh, that's nice." So I don't even know if they've ever seen it, quite frankly. I really don't.
Well, I kind of want to jump off of Bond a little bit before we sort of wrap up, because I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. There's another spy film you worked on, which is Undercover Brother, which I looked a little bit at today, with Eddie Griffin. And just any quick memories of working on that film?
Oh my God, we had so much fun on that movie. I mean, I love, Neil Patrick Harris. We had fun, and it was just it's a fun, silly, campy movie. And we had fun with it. And again, I wish, social media, well, sometimes I wish it was back then. Sometimes it could get us all a lot of trouble, but it would have been nice to have all those, more videos and more pictures and stuff like that behind the scenes. It's behind the scenes for me when I do these projects, is remembering the moments with the cast and the crew. And then I sometimes I forget what was on camera, but I'm like, oh my God, I can't forget like all that stuff that we all experienced and stuff like that. That's what's so fun about doing the job. I'm very blessed and so lucky that I've been able to do this job for as long as I've been doing it.
And one element of Undercover Brother I think is interesting is that when I look at your filmography, at a certain point, there's like a very, I think, strong comic sense of like self-awareness that you bring to a lot of your roles, whether it's stuff on 30 Rock, Funny or Die skits all over the place. And I would like to know about kind of finding that sort of comedic slant in terms of how to portray yourself on screen, because I think it really works in Undercover Brother.
Oh, thank you. I think, a lot of times trying to find that self-deprecating way of being that character and doing like kind of like a tongue-in-cheek coming from that point of view for the roles.
And I would just love to know a little bit about just shooting the fight scene with Ingenue Ellis, which was a very big comedic point in Undercover Brother.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I remember, I don't know if she remembers this, but it was very wet, so it was slippery. So making sure we wouldn't fall on our ass and hurt ourselves. But the thing is, it's so funny with scenes like that, people a lot of times don't realize like there's a lot of technical choreography and, making sure this or that, but she was so great and we just wanted to have fun with it as much as we could.
So the first question I've got is, you mentioned Wild Things, you mentioned Starship Troopers, we mentioned James Bond. If they were the sort of the three lightning rods, some of your biggest moments in your career, what's the one that gets cited back to you most often?
It depends. Like a lot of people also bring up Drop Dead Gorgeous. And so I get that a lot. And, it depends. But the thing I will say about those, I will say with Starship and Bonds and Wild Things and Drop Dead Gorgeous, I am very grateful that a lot of these movies have been kind of a cult classics, and where different generations have enjoyed watching them. And I'm really, like I said, I'm very grateful that a new audience is discovering them.
Mm-hmm. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a quick last question about Bond. I thought I was going to hear it earlier, but the last sort of words in the film is Bond gets a little pun in about your name in the film, Christmas and Twice a Year. Yeah, how was that with performing? Did you just fall into stitches every time you took a take of that scene? Because I imagine everyone just laughing at the end of that take.
Where Christmas comes more than once a year?
Yeah.
Correct.
But you said twice.
Oh, I think you're right. I think your interpretation was right. But yeah, like
again,
was it fun to make? Was it fun to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's tongue in cheek, and that's the thing that I love about Bond is they stay with what they've been doing all these years, and it's still, I think, a movie that a family can enjoy, and that kind of line will go over the kids that don't get it. Well, nowadays probably not, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that is, kind of tongue in cheek and fun, and you just have fun with shit like that. If that makes sense.
It's absolutely right, and it brings me home to something I was going to mention, because this interview stemmed a little bit from a tweet that me and you were both tagged in, and someone had said about not taking your character seriously, and you replied saying being a Bond girl is fantasy. It's like and that was the perfect encapsulation of it, and I think that really brought it home, and I'm glad you stood up for the character in that sense, because that's what it is.
No, thank you. I mean, it's a Bond girl, and I mean, look, I did get a lot of shit for it, but I was like, but if I didn't do that, I would have gotten, a little bit of crap for that too. So, that's what movies are. I remember movies as being fantasy. It's an escape. So let's escape and have fun and have a fantasy. So that's how I look at it.
Well, before I let you go, firstly, what are you working on at the moment, Denise?
I actually have quite a few things I'm doing. I'm also in the process of producing 2 different projects as well. And I'm very lucky that I'm able to stay busy. I stayed busy during all the lockdown and everything. And I'm just by, grace of God and everyone and in my life that I'm, able to still work as much as I have been.
And the last question, and this has been asked to everyone that's been on the show. Denise Richards, what is your favorite spy movie of all time?
I couldn't say a favorite.
You got to pick one.
I mean, how do you pick one?
We've not managed to do it in 3 years, to be fair. But is there any favorites you reach for?
No, I mean, I think I was part of one of the biggest iconic spy franchises in the world. So they're doing something right, and it's awesome that I was a part of it. So I don't know.
I don't think I can argue with that option. The world is not enough. When Denise Richards tells you her favorite spy film is The World Is Not Enough, you accept that answer.
Hold on, I didn't say that, but I just said that I was part of the whole franchise. I think it's like the ginormous part of they are spy movies.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They are like the flag bearer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Denise, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm still not convinced this has actually happened. I may still be dreaming.
You're so cute and sweet. Thank you.
But thank you for your time. It's been an absolute honor speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. It means a lot.
Absolute pleasure. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, you guys.